Hello, welcome back. Today we're going to definitely not second recording, by the way. I definitely didn't have to do this again. We're going to talk about the Time Smackdown that's coming out in a few hours. From me recording this video, hopefully by the time I release this, it might already be out for some of you guys, probably not. For the most part, but there's a lot of cards that came out. They all got leaked with the data mine that happened alongside trading. So let's talk about those cards for a second. I have a decent amount of cards pulled up. We're just going to talk about these. I didn't feel like going through each and every single card because there's a lot of cards I don't think warrant me going through. Like I could talk about Star Raptor, but it's just a better version of like Arbok. So I think that's very interesting. I do like Star Raptor. I think it's a little special illustration looks interesting. But let's start with Yon Mega. Yon Mega is really interesting. Yon Mega EX, 140 HP, 3 colorless for Air Slash, which is 120. We discard random energy from this Pokemon. I think Yon Mega is going to be very good. You can splash it in any deck because it takes colorless energy, especially alongside something like Yalda, which you can kind of power it from the bench. I will say, I noticed a trend with this set, and we'll talk about it a bit later when we get to a certain EX Pokemon. But I do feel like Yon Mega is going to be very good. It allows you to slot grass into any deck because of the fact that it takes colorless, you can play it whenever, which is really good. So if you have a deck that's necessarily weak to grass, for example, some fighting decks are weak to grass. So you can it can be used against those. So for example, if you're playing electric, I know a lot of electric are weak to fighting. You could have something like Yon Mega in your pool, which can then attack the opposing fighting types, which is really nice. It's a very niche example, but it's still a decent example to think about. I do feel like Yon Mega EX is going to be very powerful. Next up on the block, we have Shaman. Now, Shaman is interesting. A lot of people are excited for this because of Flagrant Flower Garden. What this is during your turn, you may heal 10 damage from each of your Pokemon. It's essentially the same ability that Butterfree has, but a little weaker, which makes sense because Butterfree is a stage 2. I can see this being played. I don't think it's going to be game changing. I don't think everyone's going to be running Shaman, but I do think it's nice to have. This will be good in like those non-EX formats. Those formats are going to be very interesting to have this around as kind of a way to keep it up. Or if you're playing one of those like basic only formats, this is another good card to have. So we're gonna I don't know. We're going to move on from this one, but I do think that Shaman is interesting when you look at those other formats that exist. Next up, we have Infernape EX. A couple things with this card. One, it's surprising we didn't get Empoleon and Torterra EX. I'm not like I'm mad about it. I think it's just interesting because we also don't have a non-EX Infernape, which is usually we get something along those lines. So this is just interesting. Anyway, 170 HP, which is pretty respectable. 140 damage, 2 energy, Flare Blitz. Discard all fire energy from this Pokemon. That's pretty good too. It does take 2 energy, which is nothing at all to do 140. It does discard all fire energy, but it's still pretty good, especially the fact that it doesn't have a retreat cost. So you can essentially play this alongside like Moltres or something. Get this out because by the time you get to Infernape, it's a stage 2. But by the time you get to this card, you should already have 2 energy on your Monferno in the back. You can throw it out, Flare Blitz, do 140. Next turn, you can just swap this boy out. It won't be any issue. I think this is a very interesting card. This might be a way to get fire back on because I know people were playing it during the start of MI format because of the rise of Celebi, but eventually that fell off because Gyarados became popular. So it'd be nice to see Infernape maybe jump back up. Maybe it can bring fire back to where it should be in my eyes. Next up in this set, we're going to talk about Mamoswine because, speaking of the devil, if fire or water Pokemon get really good, I think Mamoswine is going to be a very good counter for these. First off, it's not an EX, so it only takes 1 prize if it dies, has 160 HP. The ability Thick Fat is kind of all we care about. It does have Frosty Flattening for 2 water, 2 colorless for 120. That's interesting. 4 retreat cost is bad, but this ability Thick Fat, where it takes 30 less damage from fire or water type Pokemon, is really, really good. If a fire deck, like for example, Infernape, were to get super popular and start running the meta, something like Mamoswine could come up and stop it. If something like Gyarados EX continues to be popular, maybe Palkia EX becomes the new meta, something like this could stop it. It'll take just less damage from these Pokemon and it can kind of just stick around a lot longer, especially if you're doing something like 120 per attack. I think it's very good, especially because it's not an EX or anything, so the fact that it's only losing you 1 prize card is not bad either. Next, we have Electivire for 120 HP. Not bad, but for 2 energy, Exciting Voltage. If this Pokemon has 2 more energy attached, electric energy, it does 80 more damage. So you need 4 lightning energy to do 120 damage. This is really good. This actually combos well with Volkner. Volkner is interesting. It says choose one of your Electivire or Luxray, attach 2 energy from the discard pile to it. Volkner plus Electivire is going to be very good at getting energy onto this. But another card I want to remind you exists is Lieutenant Surge. Electabuzz evolves into Electivire. So if you're playing something like Magneton and your Electivire, you can use your Magneton from GA format, and you can use those to pull up, what is it called? I think it's like Bolt Charge or something, where it can pull electric energy to themselves. You can use something like Lieutenant Surge to move that all towards your Electabuzz in the front, evolve it to Electivire, and start smacking things. I mean, that's a very interesting combo. It's something you can do just for some kind of consistency. I think it's going to be very good. Speaking of Luxray, I think that should be next. Luxray, 130 HP, has the 3 lightning attack of Volt Bolt. Discard all lightning energy from this Pokemon. This attack does 120 damage to one of your opponents. Best part about this, it's not to your active, it's just to an opponent's Pokemon. You can hit something on the bench for 120, which is wild, man. Before this, I think the hardest hitting we had was 50 to the bench. I think. I'll have to double check, but 120 to the bench is kind of cracked. You could, if they're trying to set up, you could just kill it. This kills any stage 1 of like a stage 2 line. You know what I'm saying? Like anything like what is that thing called? Grovel or Prinplup or Monferno or Venus or Ivysaur or something like that. Something where they're trying to set up and they need like turns. Like you can take out, let's say for example, Celebi is still popular. This takes out Servine. Like 120 to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Not to mention, once again, we have something like Volkner, which attaches 2 lightning energy from the discard pile to that Pokemon. And Electric likes to switch around a lot. It's actually one of the big things. That's why they have such low retreat costs. Not to mention, after you use this, Luxray will discard all lightning energy from it. So you can just use Volkner to attach 2 more, get one from the pool, and boom, you're back to another 120 nuke. And I think that's going to be very good. I do think that going forward, Electric will be good without Pikachu EX, which is something I was kind of worried about because I saw Pachirisu EX in the leaks, not the leaks, but the trailer, and I was like, ooh, but Pikachu EX is better. Seeing these 2 cards here, Electivire, and Luxray, and I think that these 2 cards are going to kind of shape it, so I think it's going to be very good. Next up, we have Dusknoir. Dusknoir is going to be very good. I think this card's going to be insane. So Dusknoir is a stage 2. 130 HP. It's attacks, whatever. It's 1 psychic, 2 colorless for 70. More importantly, we have Shadow Void. Now, Shadow Void's very good. As often as you like during your turn, you may choose one of your Pokemon that has damage on it and move all of its damage to this Pokemon. This is good for several reasons. For one, let's talk about another card that we have out. That's going to be out. I believe it's called Cyrus. Now, Cyrus is very interesting because it specifically says target one of your opponent's Pokemon that has damage counters on it and move it to the active slot. So I'm sure there's been times where you have a Pokemon that has damage on it, you pull it back to the bench so you don't lose those that. It might be an EX, you're trying to save yourself 2 prize cards. It could be something like Starmie EX is what made Starmie EX very powerful. If one of those got hurt, you could always swap it out for free. Same with the Monferno EX, being able to swap out for free. Cyrus punishes that extremely hard. And I do think that something like Dusknoir can save you in that situation. Let's say, for example, you're already down 1 point. You have your Infernape, you swap it back to the back, and you use Dusknoir to pull everything off your Infernape to Dusknoir. They can Cyrus you. You put up Dusknoir because your Infernape no longer has damage on it. They take it out. They only take 1 more prize point. They don't take the 2 they would have gotten if they got to pull up your Infernape. I think that's really good. I think Dusknoir can be seen in every deck if you're able to play it. Do I think that's going to be a possible? No, but I do think it's very interesting to look at. If you have a deck that can afford to play a random stage 2 line, I don't think so, especially with how strong I think Coldest is going to be. I think this is a good thing to kind of look at for those decks. Next up, we have the Lake Trio. We're going to talk about all 3 of these together. I'm going to talk about them in order of importance that I see them. We have Azelf, which has they all have 70 HP. That's a constant. All 70 HP, all 1 retreat cost. Azelf, Psychic Arrow, 1 colorless, does 20 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. It's whatever. We have Uxie. We have Mind Boost. Take 1 Psychic Energy from your Energy Zone and attach it to Mesprit or Azelf. It's really good. It gets the other ones powered up. Now, obviously they work together because they're a trio, and Mesprit is the culmination of that. So for 3 Psychic Energy, you have Supreme Blast. You only use this if you have Uxie and Azelf on your bench, and if you do, it does 160 damage. However, you have to discard all energy from this Pokemon. Now, with these three, I do think this is going to be some sort of gimmick deck. This is going to be very interesting to think about. Matter of fact, my favorite deck from GA format was Nido's, like the Nido family. So like Nido King and Nido Queen. This is kind of like a new rendition of that, except Psychic has a lot more support. For one, these are all basics, so you can search them all off Pokeball. Obviously, you have stuff like Professor's Research to kind of draw to. You also have things like Psychic, the Mythical Slab, so you can kind of look through it for more Psychic Pokemon. I think these three are going to be insane. I am excited for these three. Very excited. We're going to see how that goes. Next up, we're going to talk about is I want to talk about those two together, so skip that. So let's talk about Per Ugly. Per Ugly's very interesting. It's 110 HP, 3 colors energy for Interrupt, which does 60 damage. However, it also has an effect. Your opponent reveals their hand, choose a card you find there, and shuffle it into your opponent's deck. Now, this is interesting for several reasons. Now, let's talk about this for a second. This one I actually want to cook a little bit. We have another new card, Mars. Okay, let's read Mars real quick. Your opponent shuffles their hand into their deck and draws a card for each of the remaining points needed to win. Okay, so you have Mars, which draws cards equal to what you need to win. You have Per Ugly, which can shuffle a card back to the hand. Now let's put you in a situation where you've already taken your opponent's, you've taken an EX Pokemon from your opponent. So they need to take one from you. They've taken down your EX. Let's say you're in your Monferno, you're Infernape. We're saying the situation where you didn't have Dusknoir, right? Instead you played Per Ugly. They take your Infernape. They have 2 points now. They need 1 point to win. You use Mars. You make them they have 1 card in their hand. You hit them with Per Ugly. You shuffle it back into the deck. They now have no cards. Their only option is to top deck something that can deal with your Per Ugly. And 60 damage isn't like nothing. Like 60 damage isn't bad. You can 2 or 3 shot something. You're still playing Giovanni at this point. You could potentially do 70 damage one of those attacks. I don't think Per Ugly's bad. It does have a high retreat cost, but it's the same as Interrupt. So you can either attack or you can retreat with it. I think that's very good. Like I said, I think Colors is going to be very strong. And the reason I think Colors is going to be very strong is because of a certain EX. We're going to call it Licky Licky. Licky Licky EX, disgusting card. So 160 HP. 4 cost for Licking Fury. Okay? Which, really not that bad. And the reason I say it's really not that bad because of what it does. 100 damage, okay? Plus, flip a coin until you get tails. This attack does 40 more damage for each heads. Does 100 damage base. Regardless of whether or not your first coin you flip is tails, you're doing 100. However, this has infinite damage potential. Now, usually when you have those cards, they kind of suck. You have something like Marowak EX, which has potential to do 160 damage, but it can really only do 80 twice, and there's potential to do 0. Same with like a continuous tackle or lick. There's other cards that do this. Like pretty sure there's a Licky Tongue that has like a flip coin effect that just keeps licking, and the Eevee, the continuous tackle, whatever. But those have a chance where you can do 0 damage. This does not. No matter what, you're doing 100, and I think that's very good. 4 retreat costs is a lot, but honestly, at this point, the way you're playing Colorless is you're playing it alongside Dialga. You can get this ready in 2 turns. That's how crazy this is. And I think that's very important to think about. I think Colors is going to be very strong. There's a lot of other good Colors Pokemon. One I've already talked about being Porygon. So I think this is going to be really good. So we'll see. We'll see. But I'm very excited for this. Another one I'm excited for is Bastiodon. Bastiodon and Cranidos are going to be very insane. Cranidos, for 1 energy, is doing 130 damage, which is crazy. Now, it does have a drawback that if you knock out your opponent with this damage, you take 50. But it has 150 HP. That's fine. And even if I don't take out my opponent, 130 damage is crazy. If I have Lucario on the bench, it's 150. I think Cranidos is crazy. Now, Bastiodon's even crazier, though. So Bastiodon has 160 HP. And it does have an attack for, I think it's 3 energy, headbang for 80 is whatever. More importantly, it has an ability called Guarded Grill. If any damage is done to this Pokemon by attacks, flip a coin. If heads, this Pokemon takes minus 100 from that attack. Now, this means that every attack Has potential to do minus 100 damage. Um, and this thing has a lot of HP, man. So a lot of the time you're going to be two-shotting this. You're not going to be one-shotting this. So if you're already going to be two-shotting Bastiodon, and then it flips heads. Three-shotting it now, right? Flips heads again. Oh, you might be four-shotting it. This thing has the potential to just not die. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think that's actually a really good thing. And I'm very excited to see if Bastiodon stalls like a tactic. Thankfully, while still has a lot of good cards in this set, they don't have a ton of good support. And man, they definitely don't need it because if they had support, ooh, it'd be a little disgusting. So next we're going to talk about the Team Galactic Grunt. This card is interesting. So it's really good, specifically if you're playing something like Dark, where you want to play Dunk Tank or Progunk, you're playing it in those decks. Or if you're playing Colorless that has Glameow, right? Like you can put in Glameow on any deck, right? This is just a Pokeball for that. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like if you're playing Perugly, you're playing Stuntank, you're playing it Toxicroak, this is a good card. It helps you get to your babies without using Pokeball. I mean, it's essentially two extra copies of Pokeball if you play two. But like in reality, it's like it's fine. It's definitely an okay card. I think this is fine. I don't hate cards like this. I think cards like this are going to be good because there's ever a point where we get a really good Toxicroak or a really good Stuntank, then this is going to come up again. And it's going to be like, oh, well, this is an easier way to search the babies of it. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's one of those cards that like has potential to age. It's kind of like how I mentioned Lieutenant Surge earlier. And I think that those cards that specifically mention Pokemon are going to have chances to age well. I do think Lieutenant Surge is going to age well because of the fact that it mentioned Electabuzz and Electivire is so good in this set. I'm like, okay, that got me looking at Lieutenant Surge like he might be being used again. So I do think this is going to be a good card. Next up, we're going to talk about the Dynamic Duo. Now, I've spoken on Weavile EX, actually. At least I think I have. 1 energy, Scratchy Nails. If your opponent Pokemon has damage on it, this attack does 40 more damage. 30 damage normally. 140 HP, 1 retreat cost, whatever. And I've, in the past, said it was fine. Like 30 damage for 1. You hit it again to 70. It's whatever. That was before I noticed there was another Dark EX in this set. And that's your boy Darkrai. Now, Darkrai, let's read it. 2 retreat, 140 HP. Dark Prism, 80 damage for 3, 2 dark, 1 colorless. Nightmare Aura is this ability. Let's read this ability, because this ability is what makes this whole thing come together. Whenever you attach a darkness energy from your energy zone to this Pokemon, do 20 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. Now, here's a situation. A situation where you have Weavile EX in the active. Your opponent has a Pokemon in front of it, no damage on it. You have Darkrai. You place Darkrai, you give Darkrai 1 energy, because Weavile only needs 1, so it's not like you have to give it too much energy anyway. You give Darkrai 1 energy, it does 20 damage to your opponent's active. Weavile's now doing 70. It's instantly online. This is every time. This is not. It doesn't have to be in the active slot. It just happens. I think Darkrai and Weavile are going to do some disgusting stuff. Even if it's not Darkrai Weavile, I'm thinking like Darkrai Arbok. You lock them in with Arbok and have Darkrai. Like there's some crazy stuff you can do with this Pokemon. I do think this card's insane. So like I don't know, man. I feel like I feel there's a lot you can do here. Speaking of insane cards, Giratina's interesting. Now, Giratina's interesting because of its ability. So we'll talk about it. It's 120 HP as a basic mon, obviously. Spooky Shots, 2 Psychic, 1 Colorless for 70 damage. That's not really what we're here for. Its ability says it's Levitate, which makes sense. It's Giratina's ability. If this Pokemon has energy attached to it, it has no retreat cost. Doesn't specify. It says any energy attached to it. Has no retreat. Normally it has a 3 retreat cost. So without that, it's just nothing. So let's talk about this for a second. There's one card this works with. And there's one card that I almost said was bad until I got to Giratina when I was reading through the cards. And that's Dawn. Because Dawn is interesting, right? Let's read Dawn. Dawn says, move an energy from one of your benched Pokemon to your active. That's a very niche thing. Because most of the time, if you have energy on your bench Pokemon, it's for a reason. If you have energy on your active Pokemon, it's for a reason. Um, and there's going to be very few situations where you need Dawn. However, here's a situation, right? Let's say, for sake of the argument, you're playing. I don't know, man. Pikachu EX. This is a bad Pikachu EX deck because you're playing a non-electric Pokemon. But for sake of argument, you have one electric energy on your Pikachu EX. You got set up pretty quick. This is like turn 4 or something, but you have Giratina as your blocker. It's just sitting there taking damage in the start. But you're like, oh shit, I have one more energy. I could put it on my Pikachu EX, but my Giratina might die. And you don't have any more cards in the deck for some reason. You have no more electric cards, so you're a dumb Pikachu EX player in this situation. What you could do is you put that electric on Giratina, right? Now it has no retreat cost. It retreats to the back, you swap in Pikachu EX, you Dawn. You move the energy from Giratina you just placed on it to swap it out to your Pikachu in the front line. That's an alley-oop, my boy. Now, the thing is, I don't want to say, because I want to say that I think Dawn is strong. I talk down to it, but I think Dawn is strong. The thing with it is I don't see it being strong in many situations. But I do think the Pokemon is strong. Oh, it's raining hard. Holy fuck. It's oh my god. It's raining. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. I think it's strong, but I think this combination is not bad, and I think Giratina is going to be a really good blocker. A lot of people use Druddigon for the same reason. I'm going to wrap this up because apparently I did lose power last night, so we're going to make sure we don't do that today. The last one I want to talk about is Pokemon communication. Ooh, it's coming down. Oh man, talk about a good night. I need some Time Smackdown over here to get this rain and stuff. That was not even a good joke. Oh my god. Pokemon communication is the last card we're going to talk about today. Just another one of those item cards. Essentially, you get to choose a Pokemon that's in your hand and switch it with a random Pokemon in your deck. Now, depending on how you build decks, this could be insanely good. Let's talk about an example. You're playing Charizard EX. Normally, you play 2 copies of Moltres EX, 2 Charmander, Charmeleon, and Charizard EX. That's your lineup. Let's say you're in a situation where you have Moltres, Charmander on your field. All pieces are accounted for. You have Charmanders built up. You have Moltres. In your hand, you have 2 Charizards and Pokemon communication. No Charmeleons. You can now use Pokemon communications to swap it perfectly into a Charmeleon. Now you can start going into your Charizards. It's a very interesting card. The way I'm going to say this, you can tell who's a good Pokemon player or who's a good Pocket player depending on if they play this card. Because if you build your deck right, this card is mandatory. That's what I think. Maybe not at 2, but for sure at 1, for consistency's sake. And I think you're going to see a lot of top Pocket players start playing at least 1 copy of Pokemon Communication. That's going to be my read on it. That's what I think. Anyway, the cards come out tonight. I probably won't be awake for it, but I will be doing summons at work tomorrow when I get there. So if you're still playing Pokemon Pocket, let me know what you're doing with it. Let me know how that's going. I'm going to be very excited. I hope I pull a Rainbow Darkrai as well as the Full Art Cresselia because they tell a story. It will be very nice to have those cards. Anyway, if you're still playing Pokemon Pocket, let me know. If you hate to trading in Pokemon Pocket, please let me know. And what card are you most excited for? Did I miss a card that you were hoping I'd talk about? Let me know down below. Anyway, thank you for letting me waste your time and have yourself a damn good one.